Hey y'all. Today I want to talk about the dangers of the New Age spiritual community and why I am distancing myself from it. So, for those that don't know a little bit of a background, gaining a connection to God, source, spirituality is what honestly saved my life. And then the spiritual community kind of almost killed me, or at the very least, almost had my soul eject out of my body. Now I'm going to tell you why that is. So, I have been atheist my entire life. But around 4 years ago, I was filled with such uncontrollable rage. And I was out for vengeance and blood. And somewhere along that path, I had what you would call a spiritual awakening. I started gaining this connection to something higher than myself. I started coming into contact with what you would deem as God or source, right? And it was beautiful. I suddenly saw myself in everyone else. I felt this deeper connection to the world around me. I understood the interconnectedness of everything. It really put me in a stage where I was actually able to embody the concept of forgiveness. It wasn't just a mental construct. And so then at some point, I found my way into the New Age spiritual movement. And for those who don't know what that is, at a really simplistic level, it's not that different from what mainstream Catholicism and Christianity is, except mixed in with it is talking to aliens, tarot card readings, manifesting vacations, and such a hyperfixation on astrology that at times it can turn into a form of space racism, right? And so here's the thing. We are making the same mistakes that organized religion has always made. And at the core, at the crux of that, is the rejection of the shadow. We get so lost and entranced by these things that are of a high vibratory nature, only allowing in high vibratory experiences, only allowing in the energies of love and light. But it comes to a point where we begin to fracture and disassociate for so many parts of us that we almost get entrapped into a state of delusion. Sorry. Look, the state that I stepped into through my awakening, whatever enlightenment is, and I'm not saying I reached that, but for a moment of time, damn, it felt like it, right? But then I have to anchor that energy back into me, fully, not just escape into it. And so what the mainstream New Age spiritual community is doing, right? They're kind of hyper-focused on this concept of Christ consciousness or existing as a Christed being. And we kind of get lost in what the mainstream Catholicism, Christianity, what they've interpreted the story of Jesus to be. And yes, I do now believe that Jesus was a real person, divine being in human incarnation. But I gotta be honest, there's all this focus on becoming Christ. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but Jesus, man, his mother was a virgin, right? She was a divine being herself. And his dad or his stepdad was totally cool with that she was a virgin and all of a sudden was pregnant. Like most dads or stepdads at that point would have had the woman stoned. Why am I talking about this? What I'm basically trying to say is Jesus probably had a really good upbringing. So when he reached these heightened, enlightened states of being, when he reached this state, this energetic form of Christ, he was able to anchor it into himself a little bit easier than some of us. I'm not saying, we're Jesus or anything like that. I'm just saying, my mom was a direct opposite of Mother Mary. Okay? While Jesus was off there at 12 years old, dropping nuggets of wisdom on rabbis, I was trying to get high off of empty aerosol canisters. And so when I bring in that form of energy into my system, what it's going to do is it's going to break up all the energies of trauma and negative energy and bring it up to the surface. And that is the case for many of us who have spiritual awakenings. But what the spiritual community does, the New Age movement does, is it tells us that these is low vibe, that we're bad for experiencing this. Not much different than what all the other religious movements, or at least the Abrahamic religions, have done before us. And so we fracture and we disassociate. But those parts of us, they're not bad. They're not wrong. Okay? We kind of neglect the fact that even Jesus himself was going into church, flipping over tables, and probably having tantric sex with Mary Magdalene. I just got in trouble. And for those, I just probably upset a lot of people. And so a lot of people are probably saying, what evidence do you have about that? I don't have any. I'm speculating here. But she was kind of the only female who ran with his crew, right? She was the first one to see him after he resurrected. And here's the thing. There's nothing wrong in that if he did that. I'm just saying, I don't think Jesus was probably a perfected being. I think he was a whole embodied being, which I think is the goal here. The New Age movement starts putting like emotions in fucking categories as not to experience. Don't experience anger. Don't experience shame. Don't experience grief. You're human. You're a human being. Anger lets you know when your violations or when your boundaries are being violated. Shame can be helpful in small amounts. You don't want to be shameless and rolling around with pigs and dirt. And grief is the price we pay for real love. We lose people. It hurts. Fracturing and disconnecting from those parts of us. It doesn't make you an enlightened being. It makes you a jackass. Right? And also, let's go into another thing. The teachers of this movement. This is a complicated matter. After my awakening and I left law school, I was kind of being prepared to be a spiritual teacher. I was kind of being put in these positions to monetize my connection to Source. And I was kind of being pushed that this is okay under these concepts of abundance. But there's a lot of ways to accrue abundance rather than doing this. This has been spoken of a number of times. I started betraying myself. And God, you know what? The only reason that I started being held up in a position where I could speak on spiritual concepts is because I got very good at making infographics on Canva and cute 30-second Instagram reels. Now, I believe I'm good at my job, but that's what allowed me to get into that space. And a lot of the thought leaders in this community aren't that different. That is the measuring stick we are using. And so then there's this expectation on us to always be high vibe, to once again fracture and disassociate away from the parts of ourselves so that it's entrenched in the shadow and then it begins running us from the subconscious. Hello, priest, and pedophilia in the church. I started feeling numb. Hell, man, I'm in no position to really be a spiritual teacher relative to what we're asking of them, okay? I smoked shitty nicotine out of electronic rectangle and I had a nervous breakdown when my ex broke up with me. I'm fucking human. And many of these teachers are. And then we're mixing money and business with connection to God and Source, which is something sacred. And then we're throwing all these other things in there. We're playing with fire here. I'm gonna hit this. And people are vulnerable. and can be taken advantage of. With all respect to these two individuals, when I had my spiritual awakening, two of the people that I really looked up to were Victor Odo and Aaron Dowdy, right? They were the accessible spiritual teachers at the time. They're tall, they're white, they're good looking, they had a platform, they talked about moon cycles and manifestation and shit. But it was the best I could get about understanding what the fuck was happening to me. I trusted them. My God, when someone is speaking from a place of connection to something higher, man, there's this trust in there. And then I signed up for a free webinar they were running. This was a couple years ago. I don't even remember what it was about, but I'm like, wow, these are the guys that are helping lead me through this path. And I got into the webinar, and it was about all these methods, about how to build your platform, about how to gain more followers. At the time, I was broke, and I started using very shady and predatory sales techniques. I almost spent every dollar I had on them because I was vulnerable. Thank God, my bank account was empty at the time. And not that they're bad dudes, but when we start mixing these two things together, same thing as the mega churches and all that shit, it's dicey. And the channeling, the guides, and all this stuff, it has its place maybe. But at the end of the day, it is about connecting to your true self, connecting to who you are internally, fully embodying everything that encompasses you. We're still misinterpreting these old spiritual teachings, right? Even Jesus at some point, I believe in the New Testament, said, do not resist evil. Be nice to the hooker, right? Don't act upon evil, but don't suppress it. Allow it in. Be with it. Transmute it. Be fucking angry. It's what drives change. It lets us know when there's injustice occurring. And right now, there is injustice occurring. We have to dismantle the guru complex. It has to be done. I came up on it. I almost did it. I did do it in a way. And man, was I acting out of integrity. Did I make a shitload of mistakes? This needs to be about coming back to yourself. I don't want to be a spiritual teacher anymore. I don't want to preach on this shit. I've never felt more connected to my soul and something higher than I do right now. Because I am monetizing this. Thanks for listening, guys.